First Flame, a Whytford Chronicles tale. Chapter 1. Prince Sterling. At 16, the human prince, Sterling Thornheart, found the royal stables had become his secret sanctuary. Not for the horses, but for the young orc girl who worked there. Her name was Kessa Drasrog, the daughter of an orc lord. She preferred the common tongue translation Ironheart for her last name. Her raven black hair was always scented with jasmine. She worked as a farrier, which according to orcs was an honorable trade. She lived here, about an hour's horse ride from her father's village. The father wondered why she had moved to the palace to be the only orc living in Whytford. Her green skin was illuminated by dappled sunlight, which was coming through the tree overhead. Her dark hair was tied back by a simple strip of leather, a few strands escaping to frame her gently rounded face. Her golden eyes sparkled when she laughed, and her full lips curved in a shy smile that made his head spin. She was striking, but carried herself in an innocent, girlish way. She had just finished the final hoof of the horse and looked at her work with satisfaction. The leather patch on the bottom of the horseshoe was perfectly aligned, and the nails were firmly hammered in and clipped. She dropped the hoof and patted the horse as she led it out to the exercise yard. Sterling sighed. He wanted to talk to her. He wanted to walk from behind the hay, take her hand, and tell her she was the most beautiful girl he'd ever seen. What an exotic girl, but a prince and an orc maiden? It would be frowned upon, to say the least. He had heard people talk disparagingly about orcs. Some noble folk thought they were overly warlike and proud. One of father's friends said, "No son of mine will marry an orc." But he thought, father's good friend is an orc. It can't be so bad. And that afternoon, as he watched her hammering through forge fire smoke, and as the quenched horseshoe she had hissed in the water, he thought he alone could change it all. Just as he was about to talk to her, a page found him beside the haystack. "Prince Sterling," the boy said, bowing, "your father, the king, requests you in his study." He acknowledged the page and, glancing back at the orc girl, followed him reluctantly. Soon, I will talk to her soon, he thought resolutely. Just then, a dark shadow passed over him, and the sun dimmed for a moment. There was a sudden thunderclap which startled the prince as he looked up to see a shadow recede into the clouds. "I'm seeing things," he thought, and considered it just a rogue thunderclap which happened from time to time in the spring when rain threatened. As Prince Sterling entered the study, the smell of leather-bound books and tea filled the air. His father was seated behind his oak desk, sunlight catching silver in his beard as the hearth fire burned behind him. His mother, Seraphina, sipped mint tea and chatted with the others with a smile that made him feel at home. "What have you been up to, son?" she asked. "Out at the stables again?" He gulped and tried not to blush. Yes, just looking at my horse, making sure he's ready for the next ride." Sterling was interrupted by his half-brother making whooshing sounds with his mouth. "Brother," he said, while grabbing up the wooden sword he'd been painting. "Look at this dragon I painted." Sterling held it level and looked at his brother's handiwork. "What a great dragon," he said. "You could work at the Artist Guild if you wanted." Corin's tail swished as he accepted the compliment. Then he smiled suspiciously. "You're not just saying that to come back later and say it's horrible." Sterling wanted to tease him, but Mother might have disapproved. No, I mean it this time." Corin laughed and shoved Sterling's shoulder. "I'll take whatever I can get." Sterling looked down and saw some blue paint on Corin's tail. "You should wash that before it dries," he said, pointing at the splotch of paint that dripped on his red furred tail. Corin's mother's soft black-tipped fox ears twitched. She had been sipping tea and cream with her russet tail curled neatly around the chair. "Oh no," she said with some concern. "We'll have to get some warm water and soap on that." Corin put the sword back on the table and said, "Okay, Mother, I'll be right back." He's such a good boy, said Lady Aeloria, who was helping Sterling's half-sister with a wand lighting exercise. Aeloria was an elven noble from the northern land of Moonvale Enclave. She swished the blue-green lighted tip in the air, while Liora followed with her own lighted wand. Both were willowy and frankly elegant ladies, always pleasantly smiling. Well, Sis was grouchy at times, but maybe because he tossed a frog at her, or Corin pulled her hair. Sister Liora paused her wand practice. Won't you join us for some light magic, she asked with a lilt. Mother has your wand on Father's desk. Sterling walked to the desk to grab his wand. Hello, Papa. The king answered heartily, Sterling, my boy, listen. We're going to Swift Hollow, his father announced, eyes twinkling. The Foxkin are holding their spring festival. They'll have a feast of rabbit, berry tarts, and jam with bread. And mead? He paused dramatically with his eyes closed that could make a dwarf weep. He opened his eyes with a wink. I thought we'd all enjoy it. Lady Mira, Corin's mother, swished her tail and said, We can sit with the Swiftclaws and Mummy and Daddy Redtail. Sterling, Corin, and Liora all nodded vigorously. Everyone was getting hungry and couldn't wait to go. The festival at Swift Hollow. Guards unlatched and swung the heavy wooden gates open wide as the royal carriage with 3 wives, 3 children, and the king rode through the portcullis gateway. Sterling chatted with Liora about the new playhouse at Riverbend Crossing. As the family crossed the dry moat, Corin gripped the windowsill and looked out of the window at the townsfolk going about their daily lives. Fresh air blew in as noon turned into early evening. Clatter of horse hooves could be heard thudding in front and back of the carriage. 40 soldiers accompanied the royals. Corin loved to see the highly disciplined royal guard in their blue and white uniforms ride along with them. Swift Hollow lay only a short ride away, nestled in a fertile land where the woods gave way to meadows dotted with berry orchards. Even from the road, he could smell wood smoke and honey cakes baking. As they approached, he could hear the distant thump of drums and the bright trill of fox flutes. This village was where Corin's mother, Queen Mira, came from. She was a graceful red fox-skinned woman. She had soft, waved, auburn hair, smiling blue eyes, and a deep red tail. Her maiden name was appropriately Redtail. She had married King Arlen for love. She was his first love, and from this union, a whole fox village appeared in the south. She had requested her people to be given land south of the palace, and there they were thriving, just a few minutes' ride from the palace. The village was made up of golden brown thatched cottages along winding lanes. Red, green, and yellow painted doors were propped open. Fox-skinned children with little bushy tails darted between horses' legs to wave at the carriage and all the soldiers. Banners of crimson and gold fluttered overhead. Long tables were filled with steaming platters of aromatic roasted rabbit glazed with sweet berry sauce, fresh bread, and platters of fruit tarts of strawberry, blackberry, and cloudberry topped with whipped cream. Corin descended from the carriage, then ran and skidded to a stop in front of Prince Sterling. His bushy foxtail was brittle, bottle-brushed with excitement. His ears perked high. His bright green eyes glinted with mischief. Sterling, he yelled, his voice cracking awkwardly. Race you to the ribbon circle. Loser eats a slug. Corin took off, darting through startled villagers, tail streaming like a banner. He spun backward, grinning wide. Can't catch me, he called, and laughed as he ran between ribbon dancers whirling with colorful silk ribbons on sticks overhead. He turned and promptly tripped over his own tail in front of some giggling fox girls. He popped back up with red cheeks and smiled sheepishly. Moments later, he teased his younger red-tailed cousins into a game of chase, and they became a blur of red and black tails. Sterling's father was soon swept away by fox-skinned Lord Reynard Swiftclaw, who clapped him on the back and offered him a mug of beer. Hoppy-smelling foam drifted down the side as he toasted their friendship. His mothers and Liora, his sister, vanished into a circle of laughing fox-skinned ladies. Sterling wandered toward the music, drawn like a moth. The square had been cleared for dancing. Lamplighters stood by and ready to light the lamp oil and the candles on the tables. The sun, which hadn't quite set, cast warm light on the ring of villagers clapping in time. In the center spun a girl in a dress, the colors of fresh flame, layers of silk that caught every breeze and flared around her like red, orange, and yellow petals. Her hair was a torrent of fiery red, loose and wild with sparks of copper and gold. A matching red tail swayed in perfect rhythm, ears tipped with soft black tufts. She danced with the long red and green ribbon, twirling them overhead so they traced arcs against the sky. Her laughter rang out, bright, unforced, the kind that made the whole square feel lighter. When she spun, her green eyes flashed with joy, and for one breathless moment they met his. She blushed with half-lidded eyes, smiled, and kept dancing. His heart slipped out of rhythm while he lingered at the edge of the circle, half hidden by a banner pole, watching the confidence in which she followed the music in perfect time. He didn't yet know her name or that she was Lord Reynard's daughter. All he knew was that their attention, brief as it had been, had unsettled him, and he could not look away. The music swelled. The ribbons snapped overhead like banners, and the smell of smoke, good food, and lavender from her hair filled the air around him. The sun was setting, and lamps all around the square were being lit by lamplighters. A bonfire was lit in the middle of the square. Amid laughter and lamplight, he stopped looking anywhere else, captivated by the whirling, red-haired fox girl who seemed to see only him. Zara ran over and pulled him by the hand from the edge of the circle with a mischievous flick of her russet tail, her green eyes sparkling. "You can't just stand there looking princely all night," she teased, voice light and playful. "This is a fox festival. We dance, we eat, we might steal things we're not supposed to." He laughed, letting her pull him anyway. "Steal things? Should I be worried about my gold?" She spun to face him, walking backward without missing a step, ribbon still in one hand. Oh, not coin, something far more valuable. Her gaze dropped to the silver fox pin fastening his cloak. "Like this pretty little trinket." Before he could react, her fingers darted out, quick as a fox, snatching a hen, and unclasped the pin with practiced ease. She held it up between them, silver catching firelight like a tiny star. "Mine now," she declared, grinning wide. "If you want it back, you'll have to catch me." Then she turned and bolted, laughing, red hair streaming behind her like a banner, tail high as she wove through the crowd. As his cloak fell to the ground, he gave chase without thinking, his heart racing. She darted between dancers, ducked under a low-hanging lantern, and flashed him a daring glance over her shoulder. "Come on, Your Highness," she called, voice bright with challenge. "Show me those long legs are good for something." He lunged, nearly caught her sleeve as she squeaked and spun away, ribbon whipping like a lure. Around the bonfire, she led him past tables of startled guests who cheered them on until they reached the edge of the berry orchard where the torches grew dimmer. She slowed just enough for him to close the distance, breathing hard, cheeks flushed, eyes dancing. He reached for the pin. She held it high, laughing. "One more step," she warned, backing towards the shadow of the trees, "and I disappear into the orchard with your family crest forever." He stepped forward anyway, hands open. "I suppose I'll just have to follow you into the dark." Her grin softened, playful but warm. "Maybe that's the idea," she whispered. And under the first stars of the evening, with music drifting from the square, the chase paused, two breathless teenagers close enough to feel each other's warmth, the silver fox pin glinting between them. He lunged forward in the dim edge of the orchard, close enough to catch the scent of flowers and wood smoke in her hair. His hand brushed her cheek, and he leaned in, heart pounding like a fool, to steal a kiss. She didn't pull away. Her lips met his for one soft moment. It was quick and chaste, but it jolted every nerve in his body. Then with a delighted giggle, she darted back toward the torchlit square. He chased after her, laughing. The music and cheers grew louder as they burst back into the festival light. She reached the table first, breathless and flushed, and spun to face him. He caught up with her, and she said, "I give up," she announced. "The prince is too fast for this poor fox girl." His hand settled on her waist to steady them both. Zara's breath caught. She looked up with shining green eyes and giggled with her hands over her mouth. "Here," she whispered, pressing the silver pin into his palm. Her fingers lingered against his for a heartbeat. "Take it, Your Highness." The pen was warm in her hand. The music seemed to swell on cue as King Arlen and Lord Reynard raised their frothy mugs to Sterling across the table, eyes twinkling with satisfaction.